Jordan trying to shake off Starks. Oh, what a move!
LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Final seconds. Bryant for the win. Iverson against Gill. The crowd on its feet. Allen for the win.
Welcome to the Sneaker History Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Sneaker History Podcast. This is another one of those one for me's, and usually one for me's involves putting my friends in the spotlight. In this case, it is the effervescent, the world's most interesting man, Terrence Watson, and creative extraordinaire Billy Burke. You guys are on the podcast today to talk about a little movie that you guys have put on Amazon Prime, but more importantly, the world, and that is Meal Ticket. But before we go any further, gentlemen, how are we today?
Doing great. How you feeling, Terrence?
I'm feeling happy. Like I should get a Happy Meal. You know what I mean?
Hey,
with a kid's toy.
So, as a precursor to a previous episode we did, Terrence continues to showcase why he is one of the finest New York City point guards in terms of the connection and the segues that he is, because the movie is, of course, Meal Ticket, and that is about essentially a cultural history at the McDonald's All-American game. And so what we're going to do today is one of our most reoccurring segments is, of course, rocking and copping, but we figured let's throw a twist in honor of our guests here. So, gentlemen, what are you rocking when you go to McDonald's for your order? Or more importantly, with sneakers, either or.
T, you want to lead or you want me to lead?
All right, yeah, no, I'll answer first. My quintessential McDonald's order is a 10-piece nugget with fries. You know what I mean? And the Sprite that you can't drink because it's like, super sharp. That's
truly the embodiment of crisp. That's my
me?
favorite adjective to describe soda. And yeah, that McDonald's Sprite, much like a black Air Force One, just hits a little bit differently when you take it upside your mouth. Billy, how about yourself?
Well, so yesterday, in celebration of the release of the film, my sister, my wife, and I, and my brother-in-law took my three nieces, my sister's three girls, to McDonald's to get them Happy Meals. And we did it because McDonald's right now has this McDonald's All-American Game Happy Meal that they have out. And it was cool because the girls felt like it was in relation to the release of the film. I mean, even though it's sort of, I guess, was, but it's not a meal ticket Happy Meal. It's focused on the McDonald's All-American Game. So I guess that's what I'm rocking and copping right now, or vice versa.
Perfect. Hey, man, there's no right or wrong answer as it comes to rocking and copping. It's just we hope we get to see the joy permeate through the screen, and I think we are. So let's, without getting any further and bearing the lead, we are talking, of course, about Meal Ticket on Amazon Prime right now. And this was one that, Terrence, I know you feel very passionate about the culture. This is kind of eerily reminiscent of the sports docs, rather, that we grew up in the 90s. And one of those moments for me was the fact that the opening scenes of the movie take place in Chicago. And why I mentioned Chicago is that was the backdrop of another essential sports documentary, which was Hoop Dreams. So was that intentional? And rather, let's just talk about sports docs that you guys both liked growing up. And did that have any hand in shaping the story that we're presenting via Meal Ticket?
Yeah, without a doubt. So, we weren't in Chicago because of an inspiration from Hoop Dreams. Like, we were in Chicago because the 2022 McDonald's game was being held there. But that being said, like the way that we shot it, and the directors, Corey and Carlton, who did a masterful job on it and sort of had the vision for it, was to sort of capture the verite of the 2022 game in this sort of Hoop Dreams-esque kind of way, and just let it play out in its rawest, most, organic, and natural form. And then, yeah, I mean, look, like Hoop Dreams is a classic of all classics. Like, for me personally, that's the holy grail of, the gold standard of documentary filmmaking. And was without a doubt one of the most prolific documentaries that I saw as a kid growing up.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, like Billy said, like it just happened to be in Chicago, but I think like the connection for me is probably one of my favorites, which is Through the Fire. And the reason I say that is because like our characters, right? Like you could tell, like, for a lot of them, right? Like this feels like the moment where, one, becoming a pro could be real, but two, you feel the gravity of like everything they're working for out of this moment, right? Like this feels like the first piece of like, they're finally seeing me. I mean, you know what I mean? Flau'jae basically says that, right? Like, they're finally seeing me. And I feel like everybody feels that way, once they're coming into this moment, and connecting that dot back to, like, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, Jay says on reasonable doubt, it's like something of a desperation, right? Like, these kids are fighting to change their lives, the trajectory of their families' lives. And this game is like that first symbol of like, yo, like, it's happening, or the work that I'm putting in is being recognized. And
It's tangible, right? And that's something Billy and I were chatting about in the pregame, so to speak, about the fact that this almost feels like step one of an ascendancy. And the analogy we were chatting about is like, Terrence, you're a comedy nerd, like you are a nerd about all the great things that we share in common. But if you are looking at it from the perspective of a Saturday Night Live cast member or comedian, right? Like, there are those years you spent at the Groundlings or being a member of the Harvard Lampoon, and it's just a stamp on your passport to superstardom. And every single one of them has that aha moment where it feels tangible. And it's really something that's genuine in an era where I think at times we feel like we have to play up to the cameras, and you can truly see the joy in it. And if for some reason this is the last step in their professional journey, that's still a mountain that they've climbed because of the fact that it's so internationally and almost globally well known. So kudos for you guys for capturing that moment. And it was one of those things that as we kind of watched the documentary, they're all recalling, and they, in this case being the players, about that moment when they first heard that they were invited to the game. So I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about how was that process bringing this from inception of an idea to the medium or small screen? Like, were you guys also kind of having those moments of doubt or apprehension around like, are we going to get this done? And then where were you when you guys finally got the green light?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Well, I mean, to sort of to back it up, like where I was when we got the green light. So I was actually in the post house where we were editing New York City Point Guards. So I was a producer on New York City Point Guards, and it was sort of the tail end, of the edit as we were sort of finishing the film, and Chike Oza from the directing duo Cootie and Chike, who were executive producers on New York City Point Guards, which Terrence also worked on, was a writer. It was directed by Sam Iliad, executive produced by Rich Kleiman and Kevin Durant, along with Cootie and Chike. But Chike had called me up while I was working on NYC Point Guards, and he was like, "Yo, you ready for your next doc?" And I was like, what do you got? And he was like, the McDonald's All-American game. And I was like, no way. Like, it just felt so big immediately. And coming off of New York City Point Guards, like, or finishing that up as a kid who, grew up idolizing many of the guards in that film, like, it felt like this, like, this manifestation of my, professional destiny in a way to be able to, participate in the making of that film. But then also that same like sixth grade kid who was dreaming of being a McDonald's All-American, to then have that be like the follow-up, it was like, it just felt, ordained. So that's where I was. And, it wasn't that easy. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to make a film about the McDonald's All-American game, and then it just happened. Like, there were a lot of stakeholders involved. The company known, the guy, by the name of, Ross Martin. He initially had the idea to do the McDonald's All-American game film, and he approached McDonald's about it. He had a relationship with the CMO over there, Tarek, and he got McDonald's to buy in. Cootie and Chike had identified Corey and Carlton, who Carlton Sabs and Corey Colvin, to direct the films. First time directors. They were at the time just wrapping Genius, and what is really important to Cootie and Chike is giving first time filmmakers an opportunity. to sort of, make a film. They did that with Point Guards with Sam Iliad. He was a first-time filmmaker that they helped usher into that. They mentored the filmmaker Edward Buckles on his film Katrina Babies over at HBO. And then they did this with Corey and Carlton. So bringing Corey and Carlton on board as directors, then we had to cut a pitch tape and we had to go out and shop it and see who'd be interested in it. And, there were some folks that, just felt like maybe it didn't fit into their programming. And we ultimately, got to Amazon fairly quickly. And, Noah over at Amazon was like, he saw it right away. And he was like, I want to do this. And that's how we got started. And I can't leave out Rock Nation also it was Creative Control, Rock Nation, and Known, who were all partners on the film from a production house point of view. And then Lori York at Rock Nation, who's the head of television film over there, really helped sell it through to Amazon. She had the relationship there, and she did an incredible job of getting it across the finish line.
My portion of the story 100% intertwines with like everything Billy said in the beginning. I'm not even sure if Billy knows this, but I actually got the call for a meal ticket the day before I got the call for Point Guards. I don't know if we've ever discussed that, but so what happened was just a little bit of backstory. I think around like when was Zach LaVine's first All-Star game like dunk contest? What was that, 2013?
I think so. Was that the one against Aaron Gordon?
The first one when he just took over. It was like around 20. Let's call it 2012.
Let's say 14, and this is what post edits are for. But so keep going, T.
I'm just giving that as context because Corey was like, he was shooting that. I think he was like the DP or something, and we were doing it for Revolt TV. And like, Corey has told me the story where he was like, he didn't know who this kid was. Why are we shooting this kid? Why are we following him? And then all of a sudden, Zach LaVine happens, right? Like at All-Star, Saturday night, and he remembered like I was the producer on that and like the writer, and it was my concept. But again, he was like, who is this kid from? Like, where is he from? From Washington? Like, why are we shooting him? And then like, it must have stuck with him that like I knew ball. You know what I mean? So like, fast forward like well over 10 years later, or maybe like a little bit before, like less than 10 years. But what the point is, I'm in Mexico City. I'm shooting something. I'm working on a project with Gatorade, and I get a call. I'm in a cab. I get a call from a number I don't know, and I'm like, hello. And it's Corey, and he was just like, yo, like, I don't know if you remember me. I got your number from a call sheet. He starts back, like, explaining, like, oh, like, but that moment stuck with me, and it just was like, yo, this guy really knows basketball. I'm working on this, like, documentary about the McDonald's All-American game, and I'd love you to be part of it. And, like, mind you, I'm, like, on my way to set, and I'm just, like, confused. It's, like, 8 a.m. my time. I'm like, what? Yeah, I'm down. Like, what do you need me to do? And like, he was just trying to explain it, like, in terms of like, cause I told him I want to have a real conversation, but like I was on my way to like do this other thing. And he was like, yo, like, like I talked to Chike and Cootie, and like, once he said that, I was like, oh, all right, yeah, we're definitely down. Like we're in, that's family. So I'm like, cool. Like I'm down to do it. And then the next day, I feel like we had wrapped that project at like 2 a.m. Chike called me. And Chike is my man. We'll text, but he never calls me. And he definitely doesn't call me at 2 a.m. So I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to take the call. And Chike called me and he was like, yo, I got this basketball project for you. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I spoke to Corey yesterday. I'm in. Like, let's do it. And he was like, you spoke to Corey? And I'm like, yeah, the McDonald's All-American game. And he was like, oh, no. he was like, no. Yes, but that's down the line. I need you on this other thing. Then he starts explaining point guards, and I'm like, oh, yeah, like, so like now my head's completely fucked up. Can I curse? I didn't mean to curse. My bad.
No, you're good. We're going to earn that explicit because if you want, I'll say fuck, shit. Yeah, we're good.
Thank you, Ro. Thank you. But yeah, so now I'm like, what is happening right now? And then he puts me on an email with Billy. Billy gives me the gut check. And he like tries to test me out to see if I really know ball. Like he starts throwing questions at me. And then like at the end of it, he's like, nah, he's the guy. And then he like linked, he linked me on a call with Sam. And like, I think you remember this part, like Billy, this is the part where it was like, I was like, hey guys, I'm in Mexico. I never take vacation. I know they were at like go time. They were like, yo, we need you like right now. And I was like, guys, I want to, but I'm like, I need these 3 days. I'll be back home by Friday and you will have me like 24/7 after that. But I need to finish out my vacation. I only get these 3 days. And after that, like it was go time when we did point guards. And then time went on and yeah, I got brought in to help on meal ticket. But yeah, I don't know if Billy, you would ever
Well,
even
no.
heard that.
I know that. I mean, I remember obviously talking to you while you were in Mexico City. But what happened was Corey and Carlton, I can't remember exactly how much later, but eventually they were like, hey, we got this guy, Terrence, that we want to bring on to help with meal ticket. And I was like, and I was like, Terrence, like I just finished a project with Terrence. That's my man. Like, yes, 100%. Like, let's go. So I didn't realize that they had reached out to you and in advance of us connecting on Point Guards, but I definitely, circled up with them or huddled up with them about it, maybe a month or 2 months later. And, they were like, yeah, we want to bring Terrence on, and the rest is history.
No, I mean, I can vouch for the character of Terrence, and this is one of those segues that I'm hoping to be like Terrence. As I was watching the doc, one of the things that was most striking to me was the fact that the quote-unquote character component of being selected as an All-American from McDonald's. Can you guys touch a little bit about how that kind of weaves itself into the tapestry of the game and why it's so important? And if you guys also want to kind of allude to the fact that there was that NCAA ruling that, hey, you can't play as in an all-star game as a high school senior. And this game kind of changed that narrative in a sense.
Yeah, so they have, they have a selection committee and they have, their sort of own criteria. And I can't speak to it in a way that, I think will be 100% accurate in terms of like, the boxes that they're looking to check. Right. But what I do know is that certainly, as I said in the film, like character is important. And what I can tell you is that having, shot at the 2022 McDonald's game and the 23 McDonald's game, I can tell you like all of the kids that I interface with there are just like high character kids. Like they're just really, really special kids. It's without a doubt, beyond just talent and the ability to play basketball. Like, these are really, really, really special kids. And so whatever sort of, algorithm they have that they're working on, like, is effective as far as I'm concerned. And I would even add to that, because when we came into the film, like we're trying to poke holes in it. Like we want to also find where's the conflict, like where's, like, is this game, is there anything that we don't know about it? Right. And part of that was like, well, who's gotten overlooked over the years? Who did they not pick? And we had a list running of like, players that like they should have been a McDonald's All-American. And, if you're looking for, any type of conflict or conspiracy, right, or whatever it is, we would interview people and one by one, folks would get like crossed off our list because you'd find out like, well, this person couldn't because they were just a fifth-year senior and they reclassified, right? Or this person couldn't. And there were like all these like legitimate reasons as to why these other people were not selected to be McDonald's All-Americans. Now, I'm not going to say that's everybody, but a large number of folks that were on our list that we were curious about, the answers that we got or the reasons we found out, were pretty solid.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, I mean, I obviously, Billy's right. Like we had like a long list going, and I think the one that stood out the most to us was like, yo, how did John Wall not make it? Like, you know what I mean? And then like to Billy's point, it was always a very simple answer. It never, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, all right. Like, so like going into it, that was one of the things we wanted to like, yo, like we're gonna sink our teeth into, we're gonna figure this out. And it was just like, no, this is what happened. I think the only one that like it's not so much a character flaw. I mean, it is what it is. And this person that I'm about to say is a legend already, so it doesn't matter, right? But and he obviously had a lot going on. Is like Iverson, you know what I'm saying? But we all know why he didn't play, right? Like it's the closest that I could say, like, oh, it was a character thing. But I mean, there was obviously, like I said, like other things. If whoever watches this, just go watch his doc and it'll explain. But even when you think about it, what comes out of that, right? Like he felt like, he should have been named one at least. And he created the Allen Iverson Classic, right? Like, so it was like, all right, cool. Like, and that's just to say, like, even from something that maybe someone felt like a way about, you know what I mean? Like the beauty of this game sparking other games that, like, you know what I mean? Like it is the grandfather to me, like of them all, you know what I'm saying? And like, I think that's a big part of this too. Like, like not to segue too much out of this, but like when you think about it, outside of the Super Bowl, I feel like the McDonald's All-American game might be right below, like if there was a tier, it might be like one, maybe two below in terms of like American sports institutions.
I was going to say the cultural index value of this, and it's something
100%.
else. Yeah, we'll talk about this later on in the episode, but it is very much an American institution the same way that McDonald's, the restaurant, is. And you can see that permeating through the screen. And it's one of those things that if it was, let's say, another sponsor, you may not feel the same giddiness, but these kids are in that target demographic of McDonald's consumers. They've probably all grown up with it, whether they like to admit it or not. And it's a big part of who they are as Americans. And it's not to get too jingoistic about it. It is very much as American as apple pie or freedom, whatever you want to call that out as. So,
yeah.
no, and one other thing, and I'm going to kill this metaphor, but the secret sauce of it all is there's a stat that when you're watching the movie that just blew my mind, which was 60% of all McDonald's All-Americans had a significant career in the NBA and the WNBA. So to your point, whatever the algorithm is, it's working because not only are they able to parlay that success to step one, but it's also step two, step three, step four.
Yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt. No, they rarely miss. And what to me, was so amazing was look, like there's obviously a lot of opportunity to view great players today, right? Like you can be on Instagram or on YouTube and see a kid who's playing in, some rural suburb, some rural town somewhere and killing, and you're like, all of a sudden that kid's on your radar. But go back to like 1977, 79, go back to 81, right? 85, like there weren't those outlets. So to identify these players, right, in the same way. So you had Street and Smith, which obviously, like, was a great way to see, like, okay, who out there is, who's good, who's doing what. But at the same time, like for the McDonald's selection committee to have gotten it right so many years before the advancements of technology that we have now, it's really just miraculous because, again, like the proof is in the pudding. Like you saw who's in the league. They were in the league. They're playing in the 80s. They're playing in the early 90s or the late 70s. And chances are, if they were killing, they were a McDonald's All-American.
There's a reason why there was hallowed tones and hushed tones about that 79 All-American squad. And that's why they got that little segment in the doc as well. Like, it is something. And one other thing that I really agree with what you said, Billy, is we're living in an era of uber connection, meaning, to your point, we can see any basketball player, whoever decides to chuck a shot at the rim because we all have a camera phone. But one of the things that was really appealing to me watching the doc was in that sweet spot of the early to mid-90s, it was all these rumors of players kind of coming together. And this was the first time you could not only see them in person, but then also see them combat against one another because you truly get that hierarchy of who is king and queen of the mountain.
That's right. And that's why the NBA scouts, right, like pre one and done, were there, right, to watch, to see it, because it was like, okay, here's the first chance we're getting to see. So, okay, so we know this, this player is good, right? And we've seen them win 3 state championships. But like, who have we really seen them play at those state, at that state championship level, right? But now it's like, okay, well, we're going to bring the best from all across the country, and now we're going to put them head to head, and then see who's the cream of the crop.
Yep. Perfect. Terrence, anything to add on that particular topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is kind of a testament to the committee, right? And like, I know that I feel like this is just like a societal conversation anyway. Like it's funny how the game is kind of like a microcosm of like a lot of things, right? But
Yeah.
what's interesting is like we always talk about gatekeeping and usually when you hear that term, you think about it in a negative way. But sometimes it's just like the people who are like, the sages of like of that community, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like all of us kind of come from an era where like streetwear, sneaker culture, basketball, there were people who you knew you could trust their opinion on things. And like to Billy's point, right? Like from the late 70s through to like, almost when you think about it, to like the mid 90s, we didn't really have the technology like we would have today where you could just search or, you definitely not today where you could just go on, Instagram and your algorithm knows you want to see that, right? Like you just had to have like, the Tom Kachowskis, the Boo
Right.
Williamses, of the world, the Howard Garfinkles of the world,
Yeah.
the people who everybody knew, like, yo, like, you know, their opinion, they know what they're looking at. And when you put them in a room together and you're like, oh, I've seen this player, I've seen that player, I've seen that person, they were able to come together and like really like, put together an elite showcase
Yeah.
for at least 2 decades.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something to that. I believe that again, they still get it right. So there is that still that mix of committee, and technology, but yeah, like I hat tip to them for being able to really like, gatekeep in a positive sense. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like this is the crew. This is who
No, I was
belongs.
gonna say the golden arches should open up like that to let all hoopers in. One other thing I was gonna say to you guys is the fact that as you kind of watch these documentaries, and I made the analogy of like being a parent, you're not supposed to have a favorite child or a favorite subject, but there are certain, dare I say, characters that just came off the screen. And I was going to ask each of you, did you have a favorite person that as you were making the movie, you kind of just fell in love with the person? And you're like, you know what, whatever happens, I want to just be there and I want to have season tickets for this person. And for me, I kind of joked that like, why is everyone's favorite Flau'jae Johnson? But was there anybody else? Because even Derek Lively and the whole segment about his mom and just being this tenacious dude on and off the court, having to deal with so much tragedy, but having the poise of, dare I say, a presidential candidate. Like,
Yeah.
who are those guys or girls?
Yeah. It's another great question. I mean, there's so many, just from the alumni, that we got to interview to the contemporary players. And I don't know, Terrence, were you sort of part of the conversations about early on about who we were going to think about shooting at 22? So,
Nah,
okay.
I think you guys had already shot that.
So what happened was, Corey and Carlton had put together a list. I don't know if you helped sort of inform that list or not, but when we were gearing up to go shoot the 2022 game, it was like, okay, you're there for a couple of days. You can't focus on every player, right? Like you just won't have enough time to develop a story around the character. So we had this list and we narrowed it down to like maybe 6 different, 2023 players, maybe, or maybe it was 8, maybe it was like 4 men and 4 of the women. And ultimately we had to get it down to even less. We had to get it down to 4. We felt we needed to focus on two women and 2 men for that class because we were going to trail them, the entire length of the event. And Flau'jae's name was on the list, but at the time, like Flau'jae wasn't a household name. Derek Lively was the number 1 ranked player in the nation, but we didn't necessarily know about him, and his personality, how it would transcend, right? We knew about the story about his mom. And we knew that, he was going to, he was a great kid. And, a lot of people, the way that you see him in the film is how a lot of people spoke about him. Maury Bailey was from Chicago, where Corey and Carlton are from Chicago, and the game was in Chicago. And he was like the ESPN, I think, number 2 ranked kid in the nation. So for them, Corey and Carlton felt like, there was synergy there. They wanted to, have him in the story. Right. And then Janiah Barker was, someone that we felt just from what we saw on, YouTube and some interviews, she had a big personality and, would be a great character. So we took a leap of faith on those 4 characters and we're like, okay, this is who we're going to shoot. Like, and it worked out. I mean, Flau'jae, the moment we got to Chicago, put a camera on, I was like, oh, she's a star. Like, this girl is an absolute star. Derek was incredible. Janiah was great. Maury was great. So, by the graces of God, we just, we're blessed to have chosen, 4 amazing characters that could carry a film, in this way. And then, I just also want to just give a shout out to Samir Hernandez, who Samir was an executive producer on NYC Point Gods. He, produced this film with me as well. And, he did a fantastic job in just getting the alumni to sit down. And we had, some amazing interviews, with, a number of folks, from Patrick Ewing to Chris Mullen to Dominique Wilkins. I mean, these are, folks that, I idolized as a kid. To get to sit there with Dominique Wilkins and interview him about, his McDonald's game experience was just absolutely incredible. So it'd be hard for me to put a finger on who was my favorite. I mean, Amari Stoudemire was great. I got to tell you, Amari Stoudemire was a lot of fun to interview. He was amazing. But so many. I mean, so many. JJ Redick brought it. Grant Hill was incredible. Jalen Rose was incredible. I mean, I couldn't even tell you who the best alumni was. I mean, Scoop Jackson's a legend. I mean, I don't know. T, did you have a favorite?
Favorite probably, well, okay, I'm gonna answer this in 2 parts. I'm gonna say the one, and obviously we love the film, so this isn't a negative, but it's just the one who I would have been like, yo, this kid would have been cool to talk about too, and that's probably Grady Dick, and that's only because of the amount of like personality he has. Like, yeah, like in the league he's doing pretty well, but like, you remember draft day, he showed up in like the all red, like it was like, yo, this kid's a ham. He loves the attention. So he's the only one that would have been like, but again, not a miss, and he got some shine. But I'm gonna go to now I hope you're okay with this, Billy. I'm gonna go to a moment that didn't make the film. And Billy knows exactly what I'm about to say. But Billy had like this incredible interaction with Tracy McGrady. And it was like kind of like one of those, again, uncovering like, well, what went wrong? Why weren't you in the game kind of moments? And it was like a full on like pin drop moment. Like T-Mac walked in and tried to like intimidate Billy. And Billy, listen, he's a 5'9" scrappy, slap the floor guard from New Jersey. Yo, Billy ain't taking that shit. So Billy like looked up at him, puffed up his chest and was like, you're not going to punk me. Like, you know what I'm saying? And we all just kind of watched. And T-Mac was like, all right, I could rock with this guy. And then Billy got him to open up and like remember who he was when he was like a 17-year-old kid trying to change his life. And, with all due respect, like, of course, we love T-Mac. He got emotional, you know what I'm saying? Like, because it brought him back to that moment. And, it's a testament to the film. It's a testament to like Billy, like, showing him like, yo, we mean business because I mean business. You know what I mean? But also like in that same minute, softening him up and getting him to actually like remember what it was for him to be an unknown kid, like we just talked about, from a part of Florida nobody knows about, and you were a throw-in to the ABCD camp, and you come out of that going from from that into the legend that the beginnings of the legend that we know, and Billy brought him back to that moment. You know what I'm saying? And like and it was an amazing part to watch. Like like they talk a lot about this term, well, I don't like the term, so I'm just gonna say like sometimes things make it the cutting room floor, and that's one of them. But yeah, I got to give Billy his props because we all were just like, yo, like it was intense, bro. Like it was great.
Yeah, I was going to say, right now I'm watching a show called Shoresy. I think some people will know it, others might not, but there's very much a mantra on the show of setting the tone. And if nothing else, listener, what you get out of this episode is Billy Burke sets the motherfucking tone. So thank you for that, Billy.
No, listen, I don't want any smoke with T-Mac. Like,
no. In fact, I know Tracy personally. I don't, but he said game recognized game, and you look real familiar, Billy. So don't worry about that.
No, he look. I think a lot of when you're interviewing players of such a high caliber, as T-Mac, like they've done a lot of interviews over the course of their career, right? And not everyone who's interviewed them probably has had the best intentions, right? So sometimes folks, like T-Mac, I've experienced come into these interviews with a, with their guard up, or just like, questioning, sort of what your motives are, right? Like, are you just looking for something salacious, right? You're looking for a soundbite to then spin on me. And there is trust that has to be um, created, throughout the course of the interview. So, yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe, what I can say is by the end of that interview, I think that there was, trust that was formed where, I think Tracy saw what I was looking to do and the types of questions I was asking and, what I was looking to achieve. And he opened up. And I have to say, it was one of the best interviews I've ever done in my life. Like it was amazing. And it was a very emotional story that he shared with us. And it is one of those things where you're like, how does this not make it into the film? But that's the process of filmmaking, right? Is like, once a train starts, you got to keep it on the track. You can't take the audience and, divert, to another location and then bring them back. And that was the situation we were in with his story. But, yeah, Tracy McGrady was obviously an amazing athlete, but he also has an incredible story and an unbelievable journey.
For sure. No, so we are about that sweet spot where I think we'll take one more question, and I would be remiss because one of the most culturally relevant moments I've had with McDonald's was the infamous scene in in Pulp Fiction, where there's a whole monologue about, hey, what do you call a quarter pounder in France? It's a Royale, and it's a Royale with cheese. And this is all a ham-fisted way to say, we talked about the fact that the game is an all-American institution, but do you guys see that the game itself may go international like every other facet of professional or amateur basketball in America today?
I mean, it's another great question. I think that, I would say, my first response would be like, well, why not?
Yeah.
And, but then at the same time, it's like the McDonald's All-American game, right? So like, it's sort of the institution, right, is built on this idea of like America's top players. Um, what is that? We just saw what the NBA did with the U.S.
All-Star game.
All-Star game with the U.S. Versus the world. So maybe, I don't know, maybe there is an opportunity to do something like that. But yeah, I don't see it. I don't see any reason, why the game can't, grow beyond, the borders of America.
I mean, I wouldn't hate it. You know what I mean? I think that other games kind of already have that. You look at like the Nike Hoop Summit, like it's literally predicated on the idea of like, hey, like let's take the 12 from the McDonald's All-American game and then put them against some international talent. And other like, high school showcases kind of have again like a version of it. But if the McDonald's game went that way, I think it'd be interesting. And maybe they wouldn't change the All-American one, but maybe they make one that's specifically for Europe. Maybe they make one that's specifically for South America. You know what I mean? Maybe they make one that's, for, African nations. Like I could see that, particularly because of like how much the game is growing. I think, Ro, keep me honest here, but I want to say it's like the second most popular sport globally to global football.
It's starting to feel like that every year. Like every year we're getting a little bit closer to global football. And it's really interesting because I think part of the reason why those two sports appeal to so much of us is those are the only two sports I can think of where there's no facial impediment. So you're watching a game as much as you're watching theater.
Yeah, so I mean, like I could see that. Like I just maybe it's the basketball purist in me, and I'm like, no, don't take the McDonald's All-American game away from us. But we got the incredible talent, like I said, coming out of like France. South America has always had like incredible talent, like to showcase. And again, like they just created its own league in on the continent of Africa, like specifically because they're developing talent. So with that, it has to be like, high school aged talent coming out of these places. So I could see like, a version, because McDonald's itself is global. I could see maybe they're, taking the game, around the world, but it always has to be the McDonald's All-American showcase on its own, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I'll start the USA chant after the episode. But I wanted to thank both of you. We've got Billy Burke and Terrence Watson, who have a tremendous movie on Amazon Prime called Meal Ticket. Gentlemen, any last words before we bid people adieu?
Yeah, I would just, love to just say, a special thanks to everybody involved that helped make this film what it is. There was an incredible, team behind this. I don't want to start listing off names because you always leave somebody out, but Chris Vallona was one of the director of photography on this film, did an absolutely amazing job. Brad Roth was a producer on this film, did an amazing job, helping get this across the finish line. Just so many names to mention, and always extra big shout out to, Cootie and Chike. I mean, both of these films, New York City Point Gods and Meal Ticket, I wouldn't have been a part of without, them ushering me into it. So, always just super grateful for, our friendship and the opportunities that those guys continue to provide.
Yeah, I normally end with something like wax poetic like Billy just did. So since Billy did it, I'm going to say something fun. I'm going to say, everybody go watch Meal Ticket this weekend, next weekend, every other weekend. Go get a number 2, you know what I'm saying? And then after you listen to it, listen to Freebird, you know what I'm saying?
Not only that, get the Hard Sprite. Also, if you're looking for a companion piece, we have the aforementioned New York City Point Gods documentary, and I'm sure these guys are going to have a documentary on Slam Magazine by 2029 to complete the trilogy. So without any further ado, we will say everybody good night, and thank you again for listening. You can follow us on all the socials at Sneaker History, and yeah, have fun, everybody.
Please.
Peace.
Hey, Nick here again. Before you take off, I want to thank you for listening to the Sneaker History Podcast. If you want more insights into the sneaker world, I've started a newsletter called the Sneaker Newsletter to share my knowledge of over 2 decades experience working in the footwear industry. You can find the link below or go to thesneakernewsletter.com. Last but not least, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to be on the receiving end of some appreciation. Thank you for all the support, and we will catch you on the next episode. Peace.